Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. It's so great to see a large crowd. I'm sure people will sort of trickle in as we talk as we want to get started. My name is Cheryl Leahy, and I am the program coordinator for the UCLA Animal Law and Policy Program. And this talk is able to happen because of the initiative on animals in our food system at the UCLA Resnick Program for Food Law and Policy. The initiative focuses on the intersection between food law and animal law. And David Yeung's work on expanding vegan eating fits squarely into that. And we also want to thank our other co-sponsors, the Emmett Institute on Climate Change and the Environment, Lowell Milken Institute for Business Law and Policy, UCLA Food Law Society, and UCLA Environmental Law Society. We have representatives from all of those groups here. A quick sort of housekeeping point. The prepared portion of this talk will end at 1, and then we'll walk from here down to where we're having lunch. So, you'll be able to sort of follow the crowd, but just so you know, it's out this back door, and it's about a 3-minute walk in the lawn of the physics and astronomy building. And feel free to sit, there are tables, feel free to sit and have your lunch, or take your lunch and go, but also David Yeung has agreed to stay and talk, but he has to leave right at 1:30. So, you're welcome to stay longer, but if you have things you want to talk with him about, that's the schedule. So with that, I'd like to introduce David Yeung. David Yeung is a noted environmental advocate and founder of Green Monday, an innovative social venture that takes on climate change, food insecurity, health issues, and animal welfare with a diverse platform that shifts individuals, communities, and corporations towards sustainable, healthy, and mindful living. Under Green Monday, Mr. Yeung launched Green Common, the world's first plant-based green living destination, to introduce a revolutionary food and lifestyle experience. The movement of Green Monday has now spread to 33 countries, with 1.6 million people practicing Green Monday at its Hong Kong origin. Awards and recognitions won by Green Monday and Mr. Yeung include 50 most innovative companies, 100 most creative people in China, Asia 100 pioneers, 10 outstanding young persons, Hong Kong, and Best Idea of the Year. He is also the author of a number of best-selling books on Zen wisdom and mindfulness. Mr. Yeung is a graduate of Columbia University and a director of Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute, Hong Kong AIDS Foundation, and Hong Kong Buddhist Association. Please join me in welcoming David Yeung.
Well, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. I speak at a lot of different events. Speaking is almost part of my job because it is about going around to spread the movement and awaken people to the fact of what's wrong with our current lifestyle, particularly the way we eat. But I must say that this is the first time I'm invited and speaking at a law school, in a law school environment about food policy, food law. A lot of the events I speak at usually involve, obviously, green, sustainability, environment, business, investment, etc. So this is a first for me as well. Huge honor. Now, Green Monday is a group that I started 6 years ago. Our origin is Hong Kong, but as Cheryl was mentioning, our scope actually is very much global right now because this is certainly not a local, not a regional issue. This is something that affects 7.6 billion people today and very soon 9 to 10 billion around the world in every part of this planet. Now, amazingly, when we talk about saving the environment, I think most people think of mega projects, big initiative related to energy, related to transportation, how to reduce our carbon footprint, how to enhance our life in a more sustainable way. But food, which we all interact with, 3 times a day, some people maybe more than 3 times, but that happens to be the most overlooked aspect. People, we take our food for granted. A lot of times we consume food in a very mindless manner. So, it's just whatever fills the stomach or whatever comes to mind as the flavor of the day that we want. But hardly do people realize that our choice, a lot of times without really processing or thinking, but that choice actually holds the fate of mankind and the planet. And at this point, at 2018, it really has reached the juncture that if we don't catalyze, if we don't make massive change in terms of our lifestyle, in terms of our eating behavior, we may be looking at really the collapse of the food system, which eventually will lead to the collapse of the planet. So my personal story is I started being a vegetarian 17 years ago, back in 2001. At that time, I was still living in New York. I graduated from Columbia, and I was working in New York. My personal reason of turning vegetarian was very simple. It was just out of compassion for animals. I didn't think it was right, it is right to cause any suffering just for my personal enjoyment or fulfillment. And I never really enjoyed meat anyway. However, what went on a few years after was that obviously when you're into something, you start to study, you start to get exposed to a lot of the news, a lot of the research in the space. And in 2006, 2007, at that time I already moved back to Asia, to Hong Kong, which is where I was born. And I came across this article or articles on CNN, on New York Times, about a report published by the United Nations talking about global sustainability. And the headline was climate change. But the key issue that was brought up was that livestock industry, the meat industry, actually plays a huge part of carbon emission. In fact, it is so severe, so substantial that the carbon emission from livestock is bigger than all transportation combined. That was 2006. Now, at that point, climate change was a big issue. Now, Al Gore did the Inconvenient Truth documentary. I think that was also the year. But now we're 12 years later and things are becoming much more noticeable. I think in California, we've gone through all sorts of extreme weather, from the 4-year drought to obviously most recently the fire. And down in Texas last year with the hurricane in Florida. I mean, these are all historic extreme weather that cannot be denied. So, and equal devastating climate events are happening around the world. So at that point in 2006, I was like, wait a minute. So my choice of dropping meat from my diet is more than just a personal decision or a moral decision, but rather a responsibility that everyone should take part in. It should not just be a choice of, oh, you happen to like animals more, so you drop meat. And then someone else said, I don't agree with you. They go on with their diets. But if this is about our collective survival or destiny, then we all have to do something about it. So it sit in the back of my mind for a long time. And meal after meal, lunch, dinner, obviously, I come across different people who would ask me the same question over and over and over and over again, which is, why did I turn vegetarian? Why did I drop meat? And I had to go through that answer again, and again, which is, how do I get my protein? It is actually better for you from a health standpoint. What are the benefits of not eating as much or simply dropping meat at all? And amazingly, now this is something that was the most disturbing to me, was that every time when I talked back and said, hey, do you realize that there is environmental impacts from meat? There was never one person, and I mean zero. There was never a person who would talk back and say, oh, that's right, yes, I read that somewhere, and we should all reduce our meat consumption because this is bad for the planet in terms of sustainability. Not one time, and I'm talking about in Asia, that someone talked back. Now, even in the US, I was still traveling back here, but in terms of the awareness or the knowledge of this issue, it was still very, very low. Nothing compared to what it is today. That was back in 2006, 2007, 2008. So that bothers me a lot. Now, from a professional standpoint, I'm born in a business family and I am a serial entrepreneur. To me, business or entrepreneurship is about solving problems. A lot of people would look at business as obviously making money, how do you maximize profit? I always think that any successful business, regardless of what industry you are in, it should be about adding value to people. And it should be about solving problems. Now, if you cannot successfully solve problems, then chances are you are not a very good entrepreneur or business person. So I thought to myself, could there be business that can not just be making money, but also be addressing social issues? And in fact, those issues need business to help address. And food happens to be one of them. Now, a lot of people said, hey, with all these research from scientists or different researchers saying that meat is bad for you from a health standpoint, it creates a huge burden for our healthcare system. It certainly is bad for global sustainability. And there's the animal cruelty issue. How much time do we spend in lobbying governments or politicians to try to make policies to make systematic change on what people eat? And then my answer to that is, I certainly believe governments need to and have to play a big role in this, but I don't believe governments is the only entity that should play a role. In fact, all the behavior that lead us to where we are today, I would argue that 90% of our behavior are not because of government policies. It is simply driven by economic supply and demand. Now, one example I like to say all the time is Starbucks or Starbucks coffee. Now, I lose track of the number of Starbucks restaurants in the world right now, but from where we are, which is Asia, particularly China. Now, China has never been a coffee drinking country, not in its 5,000 years of history. Chinese people drink tea. So technically, Starbucks could be extremely successful in the US, in North America, and let's say even in Europe, but no chance for Starbucks to be successful in Asia, particularly in China, because the culture simply is not there. So, if let's just say that, if the world needs to consume more coffee, does that mean we go to the government and lobby for, coffee subsidy or something like that? And the answer is no. What Starbucks does or did is that it simply create the type of brand and the type of lifestyle and the type of experience that become aspirational. That even if Asian or Chinese people never drank coffee on a routine or regular basis, people feel good holding that cup, when they go to work or when they go to school, and it become a little bit of a lifestyle symbol. It's kind of like, in different times or different eras, there are always things that we find, people like to be associated with, whether it's a luxury brand, whether it's a luxury car, or more recently, it's about more responsible consumption, things like that. So to me, government plays a role, but we also have corporations and individuals. Collectively, it has to be the three parties that drive change on a macro or micro level. So from a food standpoint, I just thought to myself that if we want the world to shift towards a more plant-centric diet, doesn't mean everyone needs to become vegan, but everyone should become more plant-centric, then we got to create better food experience that are nutritious, that are accessible, that are convenient, but last but certainly not least, simply good tasting food that happen to be without meat. So people don't necessarily have to make a very conscious choice and say that, hey, I am dropping meat for the better, for the improvement of the world, for better health, simply, for good tasting food, because ultimately that is the main decision point or factor that drive people's decision on what they choose to eat on a daily basis. So I came across a very important person in my life. His name is Francis Ngai. He is a serial social entrepreneur based in Hong Kong, but with footprint across all Asia. He has started over 25 social ventures and still counting. And those social ventures cover a very broad spectrum, from poverty relief to housing, to education, healthcare, and finally to food. Now, he happens to also be someone who was dominantly adopting a plant-based diet, not 100%, but 80, 90%. And the reason for his change was more for athletic performance. He is a big marathon runner, and he doesn't just do 42K marathon, not Boston Marathon or New York Marathon, but rather the type that he would go to the desert or to go to the North Pole to do 250K mega extreme environment marathon. So this guy's really into sports. And he found out through his own personal experience that the less meat he consumed, the faster he runs and the better he feels. So one day, I've always been kind of just inspired by his work as a social entrepreneur. So out of many conversations, one day we sat down and finally he raised the topic of saying that, hey, David, is there something related to food that we can do? Because both of us were, I am already a vegetarian and he was, again, 80, 90%. So he said, is there anything related to food that we can do that is related to social good, that has a social impact? And then I said, you know what, this is something that has been sitting in the back of my mind for many years. I've been waiting for that reason or that spark that would give me the catalyst to start something. So in 2012, now at that point, this was a very, some people call us naive, some people call us crazy, some people call us just, completely detached from reality, whatever. We started a social venture platform with multiple entities to try to reboot, try to re-architect, try to re-engineer the food system and food culture in a place that, as I mentioned, no one was talking about, but has one of actually the biggest population on the planet, and that continent happens to be called Asia. Or more closer to me would be the Greater China region, which 1.3, 1.5 billion people reside. That's how we started in 2012. The mission, the vision and mission of the whole organization is, well, let's do whatever it takes to try to at least address part of this problem. I can't say we're addressing the entirety of it, but can we start something? Get people talking, thinking, and then participating in the change, whether it's simply from their personal diets or coming up with ideas or innovations that will ultimately become solutions to the problem. Now, for anyone, in case you're not too familiar from a number or scientific standpoint, the reason why I said here in 2018, we are at the point that this problem cannot be, just overlooked anymore. There's no snooze button that will just delay this problem from happening. In fact, it is worsening every day, every second. As I'm speaking, as we are in here, this problem is worsening because with the growing, or I would actually say exploding global population and the things and the resources that when we consume on a daily basis, this planet simply cannot keep up. Simply cannot keep up. When we are talking livestock, I mentioned about the carbon footprints. And then there's also water scarcity issue. And then there's land use issue. Raising livestock for food is a very inefficient way to use water, and it's an extremely inefficient way to use land. Plus, we are talking about the carbon footprints. And together with the population growth, we're talking about an issue that absolutely will lead to a collapse, a fundamental collapse of the system. Now, to make it easier for people to understand how bad it is and how bad is the contribution of just the climate change issue from livestock. Now, of all the different types of meats or livestock, red meat, particularly with beef, dairy, it is the highest contributor of climate change or carbon footprint because cows emit the type of gas called methane, which is significantly worse when it comes to greenhouse gas effect than CO2. Now, all the cows combined, there are 1.5 billion cows on this planet. Now, just think about that for a second. We have 7.6 billion people right now, 7.6 billion human beings, but 1.5 billion cows, 2 billion pigs, and 20 billion chicken residing on this planet right now. And majority of those livestock, 98 if not 99% of those livestock are for human consumption. Now, the carbon footprint associated with that is 5.5 billion. Now, that sounds a lot like a lot, right? But exactly how bad is that? That is more than the entire United States carbon emission from all sectors, or those 10 countries combined. So sometimes, when we're talking about saving the planet, reducing carbon footprints, yes, we need countries to convene in Paris and sign the Paris Agreement. Unfortunately, the US is the only country who is not in the Paris Treaty right now. But a lot of times, as I said at the very beginning, government leadership is only one aspect. Business and individuals, we can make a difference. In fact, if the world cuts beef and dairy tomorrow, we are reducing the carbon footprint equivalent to the entire United States or 10 countries combined. Germany, Japan, UK, Spain, Korea, Australia. Just one simple action. Yes?
You have great ideas. I'm just wondering, do you think perhaps you're preaching to the choir?
Yeah.
How do you reach out to individuals who
Yes.
already have this sympathy or maybe apathetic, maybe? Oh, you're already doing that.
Yes, so that's the next slide. On a macro level, those are things that we need to get people to awaken to, that fact. And then the next part is on an individual basis, even if they're not into green, into sustainability, what are some of the benefits of this switch? So that's how we get into the health aspect. Now, just this slide alone, I can talk for half an hour, but I'm not going to get too much into this, but I would assume that most people in this room would know that the benefits of, and we're in California, so one of the most health conscious places, not just in the US, but in the world. So in terms of switching the diet for health, there's certainly a lot of benefits to that. So that's the background of the problem we're trying to address. With our group, we have 3 and very soon 4 entities that are trying to tackle this problem from all angles. Green Monday, Green Common, and Green Monday Ventures. With Green Monday, first of all, we're trying to basically shift the culture of food, shift the mindset that people have towards food. Now, I'm not going to have 2 hours, an hour or 45 minutes every time to go around, each school, each company, each, community to talk about what I just told you in the last 15 minutes. So how can we create something that can catch on very easily? Something that whether it's a 5-year-old or an 85-year-old could understand and they can take part in right away. And that's why we started Green Monday. Now, some of you may have heard of a movement called Meatless Monday. But the reason why we changed that name and we say focus on green is, number one, we want people to know that this is about sustainability. This is a green movement that everyone should participate in. And then the other part is from a human psychology standpoint. I think most, if not all people, do not want things to be taken away from them. So when we're using words like meatless or whatever that is, people feel like they're sacrificing or losing something, which I think from a psychology standpoint, that doesn't necessarily work best. So first of all, it's Green Monday. Now Monday, of course, meaning 1 day a week, adopt a plant-based diet. But we create a very inclusive platform that people can choose to join this movement in any way they want. So whether that means shifting the portion, creating a routine of 1 day a week, or simply cutting a high impact type of meat, that there isn't anyone who can say no to Green Monday. You don't have to be a vegan tomorrow, you don't have to drop meat entirely, but there's always a way for people to come in. And the next part is we got to quantify that impact. Now, just to tell people this is something good for you, good for the planet is good, but people don't understand, how much progress we can make collectively. So whether we're talking about school community, or corporation, or any groups of people for that matter, we can easily, just by multiplying these numbers, get a sense of how much water we can save, how much carbon we can save, how many lives we can save together if we simply join the movement of as simple as 1 day a week. Now the next part is having this platform allow us to engage huge groups of people, from governments to the Hong Kong airport, huge corporations such as HSBC, Standard Chartered, Google. We have thousands of companies now who are partners of Green Monday. And then engaging influencers, celebrities, who also believe in this lifestyle. They may not be vegan, they may not be very hardcore environmentalists or animal activists, but they feel that this change is necessary and they're willing to lead the change. I think that is the difference between our positioning of the movement is ultimately if we want 100% people to change, we cannot ask them to go from 0 to 100 instantly. You need a step. So one of the questions that mega celebrities, on the left this is an award-winning actress, and on the right award-winning actor. These are household names just like a Leonardo DiCaprio or Natalie Portman of Hong Kong and Asia. Is they asked a simple question, which is, hey, I'm not yet a full vegan. Is it okay for me to be a Green Monday ambassador? And I said, in fact, you may be an even better ambassador than a full vegan because you can relate to those people. And it's okay for you to communicate the transition on how you go from the previous lifestyle to one that is healthier and more sustainable. And then we start to create a global platform. Now, by having a movement that is actionable for all companies and all communities, now we have a reason for these different entities to join in and form an alliance. So we start, for example, when it comes to universities, we start at the Hong Kong University. And then immediately, the next university, the third, the fourth in Hong Kong start to join in. And then schools in Singapore start to take note and say, hey, that is a movement that we want to join in. And what we ask them to do is, you don't have to go absolutely vegan on Mondays at your school, but rather can you change the portion of what you serve? So out of, let's say, 10 dishes they serve at a cafeteria, can you go 50% vegan starting from 1 day a week and then turn that into 5 or 7 days? So ultimately, the way we do it is, if we want to change diets, what people consume, let's say 50% is the goal. There are two ways to get there. One is half of the room become full vegan and half of the room remain carnivores, or everyone in the room simply consume half and half. Now, if we serve of the 10 dishes, 5 of them are plant-based, some of them are meat-based, then everyone becomes 50% vegan or vegetarian without creating any backlash. So that is kind of an inclusive and a little bit of the magical formula that allow us to work with. In fact, we have a Green Monday launch at one of the cafeterias at UCLA with John Sally, a former NBA player, being a part of that. And we now have hundreds, actually thousands of schools around the world. And then we work with many, many restaurants to change their menu. Now that gets to the next point of why. So a quick number is, before Green Monday was founded, we only had about 5% people in Hong Kong, which is a city of 7.3 million population. We only had 5% people who had any sort of plant-based diet habits. And many of them adopt plant-based more because of a religious reason. not necessarily because of health, and definitely not about environment. As I told you, no one was talking about climate change and meat. That was not a subject that was talked about. But now 22%, almost a 5-fold increase, not a school, but a city become flexitarian. And in terms of the very hardcore meat eaters who say they cannot live without meat, that number has dropped over 30%. And this becomes the collective impact of changing diets in a city. As I said, it doesn't necessarily mean that the 100% vegan population in Hong Kong has gone up that much, but the people who are flexitarian, people who are reducing meat actively, because of that change, the exploding population of the flexitarian demographics, these are the impact that are created. Trillions liters of water, 300 million lives. I mean, just numbers that are almost beyond imagination, but simply by creating this one seemingly tiny change in people's lifestyle. And this is our global footprint. Now, that is part one of the solution, is to raise awareness, is to create a movement that everyone can participate in. The next part is, how do we improve the variety? How do we improve the quality of plant-based food that is on par, if not better, than whatever products or whatever menu items that people are eating with meat? So that's where Green Common comes in. Now, I gave you the example of Starbucks selling coffee in China. Now, again, as I said, people never had any coffee drinking habit in China, and now there are 3,000 outlets of Starbucks in China alone. So talk about transforming behavior. We are trying to be the Starbucks for plant-based. That's Green Common. How do we make plant-based cool, trendy, aspirational? Because a lot of people don't change behavior because of numbers. A lot of people choose what they like just as an emotional decision, right? As a matter of fact, I would argue that majority of the decisions that we make on a daily basis are not rational. If everyone makes rational decisions, the world will be much more peaceful now. But unfortunately, we make radical emotional decisions. So that's where Green Common comes in. And we don't call ourselves a vegan food outlet. We simply call ourselves the future of food. And the future is not just because plant-based is better for the world from a sustainability standpoint, but it is also because we are incorporating brands and products and innovations that are cutting edge, that did not exist before. So when it comes to vegan products, I think a lot of time, the first image that comes to people's mind is, salad or something, greens, right? So a lot of greens, which, although it is nice, but not every person can eat salad on a daily basis. In fact, for Asian culture, in general, we like to eat cooked food. For vegetables, we cook them. Raw salad or just raw things is not at all part of the daily routine of people's diet in Asia. So how do we make plant-based food attractive, appealing to everyday people? And that's why we come to California and, for example, the US very frequently, is we start to look for and partner with companies who are in the space, who are also creating innovative solutions to the same problem that we are all trying to address. And one of them is called Beyond Meats, and their headquarters actually is down in El Segundo. And I think we'll be tasting Beyond Meat products after this. So, these guys came up with, and they are not the only company that's working on this. There are many, many companies in this space trying to come up with different products. And in this case, they have the burger, which nutritional value-wise is superior to a beef burger. Taste-wise, it tastes just as good, if not better. And it doesn't have any of the problems now with the food system, including GMO, including antibiotics, including hormones. I mean, these are things that people have to worry about. And why GMO and antibiotics and hormones are in the food system is exactly because of what I talked about at the beginning. The world simply cannot grow food or raise livestock fast enough to feed 7 billion and very soon 9, 10 billion. That's why hormones is in. That's why antibiotics is in. In fact, if anyone spent any time on YouTube Googling or searching for videos on food or food safety, you will, within 5 minutes, you will realize that how flawed or how broken our food system is and how dangerous the food that we consume on a daily basis are actually. So once people know those information, they demand transparency and they demand new solutions. So we launched Beyond Burger. We are the first place outside of the US to launch. And then recently we launched another product called the Just Scramble, which is the vegan egg, plant-based eggs that taste and scrambles just like the real egg. And there are many of these innovations out there. So Green Common becomes the platform, the hub, the world's first destination of a shopping and dining plant-based experience, redefining people's perception and experience of healthy food. And many of these brands become our partners, not just for our store, but we also become their distributor for Hong Kong, for Greater China, or even for Asia. So in the case of Beyond Meats, they are a 6 or 7 year company, and they are busy working on the US market. So just trying to move mountains in the US, that alone is consuming all of their resources and energy. So for them to have a turnkey partner like us, to help promote their brand, to help distribute their products, to help them reach the end users, I mean, this is a match made in heaven. So that's why we become the partner, the first partner of many of these brands outside of their origin countries. And Green Common becomes a great platform, not just as a destination, but it becomes the best marketing tool of the entire space. So other restaurants start to look at us and say, hey, Green Common is selling this type of new burger or this type of new dishes that so many people are coming to. So they realize that they need to change their menu. They need to increase their plant-based choices on their menu. So by creating Green Common, we are setting off the domino effect of the food industry. That if you don't make change, you'll be behind. Someone else will change before you do. So amazingly, one of the restaurants, on the upper right-hand corner, there's a restaurant called Butcher's Club. As the name suggests, that is the meat place. That is one of the leading burger chain in Hong Kong and China. And they were the first people who approached us and said they want to incorporate the Beyond Burger on their menu. And it turns out, a year later, now the vegan Beyond Burger is now 10% of their sales. And they're attracting a whole new group of customers that they would never attract. So that is when social meets business. Is even for that restaurant owner, assume that he's not in this because of environmental or health reason. Assume that person is only in this from a business reason. We still have plenty of reason for them to adopt this change, to come on board and join the movement. And these are among the type of supermarkets, restaurants, huge chains that we work with to leverage their platform and get the change to grow exponentially. And then finally, from a macro standpoint, again, there's a third arm we do, which is Green Monday Ventures, and that is our investment arm. And we use the investment arm to identify some of the early stage companies and entrepreneurs who have excellent ideas, who have innovative products trying to address, we need many solutions to this space. So for whenever we encounter those entrepreneurs and companies, we approach them and we say, hey, we would like to join together and partner with you to help your expansion and also contribute whatever know-how we have to your company. So some of the thesis or the themes that we would select companies are the ones that also have the same mission of trying to address environment, health, and empowering people to make better choices. So that's our part of the core team here. Actually, few members of the core team are here today. And as Cheryl mentioned at the beginning, some of the accolades or recognition we got, not just in Asia, but global. So I think in 6 years, we are celebrating our 6th anniversary next month. And we are very humble by the fact that in less than 6 years, we have set off a very diverse, multifaceted, sometimes we call ourselves the Swiss Army knife of green, or green food, because basically, however way we can try to solve this problem, from an investment standpoint, trying to influence the mindset of the investors, trying to inspire behavior change from people who hold the financial capital or everyday person who choose their meals, restaurant owners, supermarkets, entrepreneurs. It's very interesting that with food, we cut across all segments of the society. And everyone can be involved, everyone can participate, everyone can contribute in one way or another. So we become this massive platform and engine, and by having this, we start to use our influence to really change the mega players. So most recently, for example, and this happened literally like 2 weeks ago, one of the biggest state-owned companies of China, and this is a gigantic conglomerate that is owned by the Chinese government, they are coming to us because they own massive shopping malls and supermarket chains, a lot of the staples that influence millions or hundreds of millions of people. And they are coming to us and they say, can we advise them on their future food strategy or future consumer strategy? How to shape their business? Because they are noticing that globally, this change is already happening. In fact, here in California, it's very much the leader of this trend. And they want to be a part of it, but they don't know how. So our tiny company, we only have less than 200 people today in our organization, but our tiny company is starting to influence mega conglomerates in Asia or global. And I think we can never underestimate how each one of us can be that spark, can be that catalyst to an important social and environmental change. So I guess my sharing will stop here. Maybe we can field one question and then we can continue at lunch. Yes?
Change happens. They're producing more. The biggest polluter is these cow factories, these mega cow factories, polluting the water system. They need to be bought out and replanted for vegetables. They need to be taken out of business.
Absolutely. I think, now that is not going to happen overnight. So how can we...
Are you in here for Expo West? Is that where you're in town?
We'll be going to Anaheim.
Is the biggest natural...
Yes.
In the world, all the buyout companies, all the big conglomerates have been going there and buying out everybody I see in the last year. I make a lot of money buying companies before the big conglomerates.
Absolutely. So I think that's when business meets social, right? If people see there are business opportunities in non-dairy or simply in the whole health and plant-based industry, that's when change will really start to happen on a more mega scale. I guess that's...
You don't need these big compacts. You go up to 5, you go that even on the coast up in past Santa Barbara and everything.
Yeah.
They're polluting the environment.
Yes, I guess that's...
So I know there's a lot of interest in China about perennial grains. Are you taking
Perennial grains?
Perennial grains.
Yes.
That you don't have to replant every year. It's one of the leading edge food innovations.
Right.
They're searching for these around the world to find ways of replacing the grains that we have to cut down and replant and fertilize. And it's a carbon sink as well, because the root process is enormous. In this.
Right.
Are you aware of this, or?
Well, I think there are a lot of ag-tech or ag-related innovations, not just in China. I mean, China, I think, in fact, they are facing a lot of huge pollution and contamination issue with soil, with land. So some of the leaders in this actually are countries like Israel, for example, who are, or in fact even Singapore, that countries that you never expect them to be players in the food and ag space, but out of necessity, out of the need to change, out of, in a way, desperation. They are more of the forward thinkers, knowing that the risk is already there, and if they don't do something about it, maybe 10 years down the road, I mean, food security will become a national issue. So you're right. I mean, how to grow food, or how to produce food in general in a more sustainable, perennial manner, I think that is, I mean, there are a lot of room. There are a lot of room for all sorts of innovations. And I think the more people who consolidate their minds, their creativity, their genius to work together to shape culture and to shape the whole food system, I think that's extremely necessary. I guess maybe the last one, yeah.
Yeah, so there's been a recent trend of people investing a lot in lab-grown meat, what they call clean meat,
Yes.
and it's often marketed as a more sustainable alternative to traditionally raised meat. And I'm wondering, in your perspective, if this is sort of a troubling trend that people may become complacent in maintaining the meat in their diet, where lab-grown meat is still much more environmentally harmful than plant-based alternatives like the Beyond Burger, and whether that will allow people to become complacent, or whether sort of green movements should embrace that technology as another step to allow people to get to a more plant-based diet, because I can see it going either way as being, potentially problematic for the movement, or something the movement could leverage to their advantage.
Well, I think we're certainly not at the point where we can be complacent. I mean, whether from an entrepreneur, investor, or general public standpoint, we're still at the very nascent stage of this change, and whether it's clean meat, lab-grown, or plant-based products or innovations, I think we need, consumers will decide at some point, right? With all the new solutions or new variety out there, what are the ones that the general public will accept, and the ones that can best address the market, I think. So we're still at a very early stage of that. But I think from a resource point of view, I mean, there's no doubt that, if they can grow meat without a livestock and requiring much less, maybe 90%, if not more, like 90% less resources to go into the food production process, that will contribute positively to sustainability. But is that the only way? Certainly, I don't think that's the only way. But that is one innovative way to think about how to address, 9 to 10 billion of people trying to feed them. Yeah. So I guess we can continue this at the lunch, right? Yes.
So down the path here, about a 3-minute walk, but thanks so much for the
Thank you. Yes.